Vin Diesel secretly walks into his own restaurant, stops cold when he hears a server crying. Years ago, he had opened Torque's, a high-end but welcoming restaurant in Los Angeles, California. It wasn't a vanity project or some side hustle to burn money. He had spent years perfecting the menu, hiring the right chefs, and making sure his restaurant was a place where both everyday folks and Hollywood elites could enjoy a great meal. But Vin also knew that no business, no matter how successful, ran smoothly just because the numbers looked good on paper. The real truth of a place wasn't found in profit margins. It was found in the back kitchens, in break room whispers, in the exhausted sighs of employees after a long shift. That's why every few months Vin made a habit of walking into Torque's as a regular customer. No flashy entrance, no announcement. Just a man in a hoodie and jeans, stepping into his own business like anyone else. That night, the place was buzzing. The Friday dinner rush was in full swing, with servers darting between tables, balancing trays of sizzling steaks and cocktails. The scent of garlic butter and grilled ribeye filled the air. The ambient lighting cast a golden glow over couples, friends, and solo diners enjoying their meals. At first glance, everything seemed fine, but Vin had spent enough time in the industry to know that looks could be deceiving. He spotted the manager, a tall, rigid-looking man in a navy blue dress shirt, standing at the edge of the floor, watching everything too closely, like a hawk circling its prey. There was something about his stance that felt off, not just observant, controlling. Then, as Vin moved toward the bar, he heard it. A soft, muffled sound coming from the side hallway near the kitchen. At first, he barely noticed it. But as he walked past, the sound became clearer. Someone was crying. Not loud, not dramatic. The kind of cry you let out when you're trying desperately not to break. Vin's footsteps slowed. He turned his head slightly toward the break room door. It was slightly ajar. Inside, he caught a glimpse of a young woman, head bowed, fingers gripping the edge of a metal counter like she was trying to keep herself from collapsing. Another employee, a young man in a Torque's uniform, stood beside her, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. Vin didn't know her, but the look on her face, that hit him like a gut punch. Something was very, very wrong. And he wasn't leaving until he found out what. He turned back toward the bar, taking a seat on one of the stools. His face was calm, but his mind was racing. The crying, it wasn't just stress. It was fear. Vin had worked in restaurants before. He knew what it was like to deal with rude customers, long shifts, aching feet. But this was different. His first instinct was to walk over and ask if she was okay. But right now, he wasn't Vin Diesel, the owner of Torque's. He was just another customer, a stranger. So instead, he listened. The young man beside her, probably a fellow server, kept his voice low. Vin could only make out fragments. "You can't let him. He doesn't own you." The woman, her voice barely audible, responded. "What choice do I have?" He made it clear, "If I don't do what he says, I'm gone." Vin's grip tightened around the glass of water the bartender had set in front of him. At first, he thought it might be about a customer. Maybe someone had harassed her. But the way she said it wasn't about a customer. It was about someone inside the restaurant. Before he could think further, a bartender approached him. "Hey, what can I get you?" Vin turned, offering a polite smile. "Just a water for now." The bartender nodded and moved on. But Vin wasn't focused on drinks. He glanced toward the manager in the navy blue shirt, still standing near the floor, arms crossed, scanning the room with the kind of presence that made people nervous. Then he noticed something else. The young man from the break room, probably a fellow server, had stepped out, walking back onto the floor. His jaw was tight. His hands fidgeted as he adjusted the notepad in his apron. He looked rattled. Vin knew an opening when he saw one. He stood up, casually walking toward the server station near the back of the restaurant, where the young man was organizing plates. "Hey, man," Vin said, keeping his voice low. "Got a pen?" The young man looked up, startled. "Oh, yeah, sure." He grabbed one from the counter and handed it over. Vin took it but didn't walk away. He glanced at the employee's name tag. Tyler. Hey, Tyler, Vin said, voice even. I couldn't help but notice. Your friend seems upset. Tyler stiffened. His grip on the stack of plates tightened. She's fine, he said too quickly. Vin tilted his head slightly. She doesn't look fine. Tyler swallowed, his eyes darting toward the manager in the navy blue shirt before dropping to the floor. Vin had been around long enough to recognize that kind of reaction. After a long pause, Tyler exhaled. She's not fine, he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. Vin studied Tyler's face, reading the tension in his jaw and the way his fingers kept gripping the notepad at his waist. The kid wanted to talk. He just wasn't sure if he could. Vin lowered his voice just enough. Is it a customer issue? Tyler hesitated. That pause told Vin everything. No, Tyler muttered. It's not. His eyes flicked toward the front of the restaurant, toward the manager in the navy blue shirt who was still standing near the hostess station, watching the room like he owned it. Tyler exhaled sharply, glancing back toward the break room before shaking his head. It's her personal business. That was a lie. Not because Tyler wanted to mislead him, but because he was afraid. Vin had seen it before. Employees stuck in bad situations, unable to walk away because of financial pressure, personal struggles, or worse, fear. Vin leaned on the counter slightly, keeping his posture relaxed. How long has she been working here? Tyler responded automatically. A little over a year. Then he tensed. Why? Vin shrugged, keeping his tone light. Just wondering if she likes it here. Tyler let out a short, humorless chuckle. She doesn't, but she can't afford to leave. And there it was. The real problem. She wasn't just stressed, she was trapped. Vin's gut tightened. This wasn't just about a bad work environment. Something deeper was going on here. Before he could ask anything else, Tyler stiffened. Vin didn't need to turn around to know why. The air shifted, thick with something unspoken. The manager was walking toward them. Everything okay over here? The manager's voice was smooth but firm. Tyler immediately dropped his gaze, busying himself with the plates in front of him. Yes, sir. Just helping a customer. Vin turned and finally faced the man up close. Mid-40s. Crisp shirt, neatly combed hair, the kind of sharp features that had seen too much and cared too little. This wasn't just a tough boss. This was someone who knew exactly how much control he had and enjoyed it. The name tag on his shirt read, Rick Calloway. Can I help you with something? Calloway asked, polite but edged. Vin smiled casually. Just getting a pen. Tyler here was kind enough to help me out. Calloway didn't break eye contact. Good, he said, clapping Tyler on the shoulder a little too firmly. Let's stay focused on work. Tyler nodded quickly, eyes locked on the plates in front of him. Yes, sir. Vin clenched his jaw but didn't react, not yet. He thanked Tyler and stepped away, feeling Calloway's eyes on him the entire time. His mind was already made up. He wasn't leaving. Not until he figured out exactly what was happening in this restaurant. He stepped outside for a moment, letting the night air cool his frustration. From where he stood, it probably looked like he was just checking his phone. In reality, he was thinking hard. Something wasn't adding up. Emily was terrified. Tyler was hesitant. And Calloway? That man had the look of someone who thrived on control. Vin had dealt with plenty of bad managers before, but this was different. This was calculated. If he wanted real answers, he needed to talk to someone who wasn't afraid. And then, as if the universe was working in his favor, Nate, the bartender from earlier, stepped outside. The kid was leaning against the side of the building, scrolling through his phone, probably on a break. Vin saw his opening. He walked up casually, hands in his pockets. Long night? Nate looked up, startled, then relaxed when he recognized him. Yeah, Fridays are always nuts. Vin nodded, leaning against the wall beside him. Mind if I ask you something? Nate hesitated but shrugged. Sure. Vin kept his voice light. Your manager, Calloway. What's he like? Nate's expression darkened. It was quick, just a flicker. But Vin caught it. He's, strict, Nate said carefully. Likes things done a certain way. Vin tilted his head. That normal for managers? Nate exhaled. looking around as if checking for eavesdroppers. Then he lowered his voice. He's not just strict. Nate struggled for the right word. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said something that made Vin's stomach turn. He makes Emily stay late. Alone. Vin's muscles tensed. She's the only one? Nate nodded. Yeah, and he's always talking to her like she owes him something. I've seen it, man. The way she tenses up when he calls her into his office. It's not normal. Vin's grip tightened around his arms. He had seen this before. A manager who played power games with employees, singling out the vulnerable ones, making them feel like they had no choice but to obey. He took a slow breath, forcing himself to stay calm. She ever say anything about it? Nate shook his head. Number. But she doesn't have to. We all see it. Vin exhaled slowly. Now he wasn't just dealing with a toxic boss. He was dealing with a predator. And that changed everything. Thanks for telling me. Nate. Vin patted him on the shoulder. You're a good guy. Nate gave a half smile, but still looked uneasy. Vin turned, glancing back at the building. Emily was still inside, still under Calloway's control. And now, Vin knew exactly what he needed to do. He wasn't waiting. Not when he had seen this pattern before. He had climbed his way up through Hollywood, had dealt with his fair share of power-hungry executives who manipulated people beneath them. He knew how easy it was for a man in power to twist the system in his favor. The employees under Calloway's control weren't just uncomfortable. They were afraid. And Emily, she was at the center of it. Vin pushed open the glass doors and walked back inside. The restaurant had slowed down, the dinner rush winding to a close. Fewer customers, fewer witnesses, but Calloway was still there, standing near the server stations, scanning the room like he owned it. Vin's footsteps were steady as he crossed the floor. He didn't stop at the bar. He didn't hesitate. He went straight for Emily. She was mid-conversation with a customer, her voice mechanical, her hands steady, but her eyes looked hollow. She saw Vin approaching and tensed slightly, like she expected trouble. Excuse me, Vin said, just loud enough for the customer to hear. I need to speak with you for a moment. Emily blinked, confused. I'm with a customer, sir. The woman in front of her frowned. She's helping me right now. You can wait. But Vin kept his eyes on Emily. It's important. And she knew. She swallowed, apologized to the customer, and stepped away from the counter. Calloway noticed immediately. Vin saw him straighten, eyes narrowing. He didn't like losing control. Emily led Vin a few steps away, fidgeting with the edge of her apron. What can I help you with, sir? Vin took a slow breath. I know what's happening. His voice was low. You don't have to say anything. I just need you to know. You're not alone. Emily flinched. For a second, just a second, she looked like she might break. But then she shook her head, forcing a tight smile. I don't know what you mean. Vin wasn't giving up. Calloway, the late shifts, the way he treats you. I know it's not okay. Her fingers curled into fists. Fear. That's what this was. And fear meant she thought she had no way out. I can't, she whispered. You can, Vin said firmly. And you will. Because I promise you, he's not untouchable. Before Emily could respond, a shadow loomed beside them. Rick Calloway had arrived, his expression cool but his eyes sharp with irritation. Is there a problem here? His voice was polite, but Vin could hear the warning in it. He didn't turn to face Calloway immediately. Instead, he kept his focus on Emily, watching how she shrank slightly at the sound of his voice, how her fingers clenched around the hem of her apron. That reaction told Vin everything. He turned, keeping his face neutral. Just having a conversation. Calloway's smile didn't reach his eyes. Well, Emily has a job to do. She doesn't have time for private discussions. Vin caught the way Emily flinched at the word private. That was all the confirmation he needed. His stance shifted just slightly, squaring his shoulders, his presence suddenly taking up more space. Actually, Vin said, his voice steady, I think we should have a conversation right now. Calloway's smirk faltered. Excuse me? Vin reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. He flipped it open, revealing his executive ownership credentials for Torque's restaurant group. Emily gasped. The servers nearby froze. Calloway's face drained of color. "My name is Vin Diesel," he said, his voice calm but firm. "And you and I need to talk." The restaurant fell into a stunned silence. Customers glanced over, sensing that something far bigger than a simple work dispute was happening. Employees exchanged wide-eyed looks. Calloway blinked rapidly, his mouth opening, then closing. For the first time, the man looked nervous. "Sir, I didn't realize—" "No, you didn't," Vin interrupted. "And that's the problem, isn't it?" He turned slightly, his voice shifting from ice-cold authority to something gentler as he addressed Emily. "You're safe now." She stared at him, as if still processing what was happening. Her lips parted slightly, a shaky breath escaping. Then, for the first time that night, she stood a little taller. Calloway's discomfort was almost palpable. "Sir, I assure you there's been a misunderstanding," he stammered, trying to regain control. "If you just give me a moment to— Your office. Now." Vin cut in, his tone leaving no room for argument. Calloway swallowed hard, his confidence cracking. He turned stiffly and led the way toward his office at the back of the restaurant. Vin followed, but before stepping inside, he turned back to Emily. "Stay here," he told her gently. "This won't take long." Emily barely nodded, her hands still trembling at her sides. As the office door closed behind them, Calloway tried again to regain his composure. He let out a forced chuckle, shaking his head. "I have to say, sir, I didn't expect to see you here tonight. A bit unusual for the owner to visit unannounced." Vin leaned forward, planting both hands on the desk. "You know what else is unusual?" he asked, his voice dangerously low. "A restaurant manager abusing his power to intimidate his employees." Calloway flinched. "I don't know what you mean," he tried. Vin's stare didn't waver. "I know what you've been doing. I know about the late-night shifts. I know how you treat Emily. And I know you think you can get away with it." Calloway's face paled. "Sir, I assure you, I have always conducted myself professionally. If there have been any misunderstandings, save it." Vin snapped. He wasn't here for excuses. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. With a single tap, he played back a recording. Emily's voice, raw and shaken, came through the speaker. "If I don't do what he says, I'm gone." Then, Tyler's hushed response. "You can't let him. He doesn't own you." The color drained from Calloway's face. "You should have known better," Vin said, his voice even colder now. "You've been playing this game for a long time, haven't you? Preying on employees who need their jobs the most, making them feel trapped. But let me be very clear, you just ran out of time." Calloway's hands trembled. "Please, I can explain—" "No, you can't," Vin interrupted. He pulled out his phone again, this time dialing corporate HR. "You're done," he said simply. "You will never work in this industry again." Calloway sat there, frozen, as Vin stepped toward the door. His power was gone. And Vin? He wasn't done yet. When Vin walked back into the restaurant, the tension in the air was thick. Emily, Tyler, Nate, and the rest of the employees were waiting. Vin took a breath, then looked directly at Emily. "He's gone," he said softly. "You're safe." Her lips parted slightly, her breath catching, disbelief, relief. Then, for the first time that night, her shoulders relaxed. She let out a slow exhale. Nate looked stunned. Other employees exchanged glances, as if they weren't sure whether to believe what they had just witnessed. But Vin knew this wasn't the end. He turned to the team. "You've all been working under someone who didn't deserve his position," he said. "That changes now." Emily wiped at her eyes, swallowing hard. "What happens next?" Vin gave her a small, reassuring smile. "You tell me." She stared at him, processing his words. For the first time in over a year, she felt something unfamiliar. Control. She glanced at Tyler, who was still in shock, then at Nate, who gave a small, hesitant nod. They were all waiting for her to speak. Emily took a shaky breath. I don't want anyone else to go through this," she admitted. "Not here." Not anywhere, Vin nodded. And they won't. He turned to the rest of the employees. From now on, this restaurant is under direct review. We'll be making changes, not just replacing Calloway, but making sure no one else like him gets this kind of power again. The room was quiet, but the weight of his words settled in. Then, Tyler spoke up. Sir, I don't mean to overstep, but this isn't just about Calloway. Vin's gaze sharpened. Go on. Tyler hesitated, but then he took a step forward, his voice stronger now. The way things work here, it's not just one bad manager. The pressure, the way we're treated, the fear of speaking up. It's bigger than just this restaurant. Nate nodded in agreement. A lot of us feel like we have no choice but to put up with it. The second we complain, we're out of a job. Emily looked down, guilt flickering across her face. I wanted to leave so many times, she admitted. But I couldn't afford to, and I thought maybe this was normal. Vin's jaw tightened. This was why he went undercover. Not because of numbers, not because of performance reviews, but because the real problems were the ones hidden beneath the surface. He took a deep breath. That stops today. Everyone watched him, waiting for what came next. I don't just want to fix this restaurant. I want to fix the system. And I'll need your help to do that. That means transparency. That means trust. That means if something is wrong, you speak up. Emily still looked uncertain. And if we do, will anyone actually listen? Vin met her eyes. I will. She studied him for a long moment. Then, finally, she nodded. And for the first time that night, she looked like she believed it. An hour later, Vin sat in his car, watching as the employees slowly locked up for the night. Emily walked out with Tyler and Nate, the three of them talking quietly. They looked lighter, like the weight of the last year had finally started to lift. Vin exhaled, running a hand over his face. This had been one restaurant, one manager, one location. But how many more were out there? How many employees just like Emily were afraid to speak up? How many times had he looked at a report and thought everything was fine when it wasn't? Being a leader wasn't just about profit margins or efficiency. It was about people. And tonight, he had been reminded of exactly why he did this. Too often, people in power looked the other way. They saw employees as numbers, not human beings. But leadership isn't about control. It's about responsibility. If you ever feel trapped in a situation where someone is abusing their power, speak up. And if you see someone else struggling, don't stay silent. Because sometimes all it takes is one person to break the cycle.